everybody. Good evening. Thank you, everybody, for coming today, and our panelists and moderator and partners. So first, I want to introduce myself. My name is Yan. I work with the Isimba game developers community. We have our communities in the Bay Area as well as in China, in Beijing and Shanghai and another city. So we are hosting regular events. We had done one in LA during the E3 session, and then we have done a couple of the events in Beijing for game developers and also for other app developers as well. And this time we're hosting this event in the Bay Area. So thank you so much for coming. And also I want to first thank our partners. So the first one is Rob from Idea to IPO, our co-host.
Thanks everybody for coming. So I'm honored and privileged to be collaborating with Jan with this event. Idea IPO is the most active, most prolific startup event organization in Silicon Valley, bar none. No need to applaud. We have over 40,000 members among all our meetup groups in the Bay Area. We've completed over 1,680 events. I want to highlight two events that are coming up. Yes, Christmas week we have events. Tomorrow, the 21st, we have an event called Year in Review 2016, What's Up in 2017. We have a venture capital panel. And this Friday, the 23rd, we have a startup holiday get-together / networking event at the Hyatt Regency Santa Clara, just in case you want to get together with people and maybe you're far away from home and you don't have anyone to hang out with for the holidays. So visit our site, ideatoipo.com, for all the details. We also have an active YouTube channel, youtube.com/ideatoipo. All of our content is available on demand, free, anytime, anywhere. And we've got tons of videos that will help you advance your startups and your careers. So thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Okay, and this is a nice era, and the food is good, environment good, so thank you, Todd. So what do you want to introduce?
Okay, so we didn't make the food. You can thank Costco, I'm pretty sure, for the pizza. So welcome to Parasoma. I see a couple of faces of people that have been here before, but for those who haven't, this is a co-working space, as you may have guessed. You just don't see all the desks out here because they're the ping pong tables behind us that we put out here. So we're the oldest co-working space in San Francisco, started in 2008, moved into this location in 2010. I've been here since August. I came back from 8 years in China. I was running China Accelerator for SOSV for the last 4.5 years, and then decided to come to San Francisco and join the Faber-Novell group that owns Parasoma. We have the open space seating. We have dedicated desks, both on the second floor and on the third floor. And of course, we have 12 closed offices. So we're built on community. Our prices are low, but we're kind of a product being sold by Faber-Novell, which is an innovation company that wants to be active in the community and involved in the community. So that's why we have this space, so that they can actually sell their knowledge and finger on the pulse of technology and innovation in San Francisco to their global corporate partners. So we don't necessarily have to make all the money like WeWork did or does on a real estate model. We're actually here just focused on building a really strong collaborative community. So if that's attractive to anybody, want to come and talk to me about potentially working out of this space, feel free. I'll be around the whole event. Thank you.
And also, I want to introduce Roger Roger is running his own law firm, and he's going to be our moderator today. So Roger, want to say something?
Thanks very much. So Rob's not going to introduce me because, see, when Rob introduces me, last time he couldn't think of anything to say, so he said, he goes to a lot of nightclubs. And I said, thanks, Rob. Thanks a lot. So I'm Roger Royce. I'm the founder of the Royce Law Firm. We help build great companies. We work with startups, and we help you succeed by providing a good legal bones to your company, as well as through our community. And that includes partnering up with people like Rob and hosting and participating in great events like this, and by knowing good spaces like Parasoma. So if any of you, have a startup company, and if you have some legal needs, come see me. I'd be happy to talk with you. We've got a great program here tonight. It's on what's new in games and gaming technologies. So I'd like to get a sense of the audience. How many of you folks are in a gaming company, gaming professionals? Okay, so just a handful, and I know I've talked to a few of you already, so I know a lot of you. There's somebody here who does cybersecurity, so a lot of people do advertising, people doing other industries that are around and supporting the community. I think I talked to an AI company out here someplace. So that gives us a good sense as to what the level of knowledge of the audience is. So what we're going to do is I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves. We've got on my immediate left is David. He is in business. He's with Delta DNA. He's in business development and product launch. He's got 20 years in the gaming industry. By the way, our whole panel has got quite a bit of experience in this industry. Bill Berry at IBM, he's mostly responsible for strategy and design. And then Ethan on the end with Midas Touch, he is a developer, a game developer. And the way this will work is I'd like each of the panelists to tell you a little bit more about themselves and how they come to the area, maybe for 5 minutes each. And then we're going to go into a panel discussion, and we're going to have some Q&A after about 45 minutes, so save up your questions. So with that, David, why don't you start?
Hi, everybody. My name is David Zemke. I guess I'll stand because that seems like the thing to do. I work with a company called Delta DNA. And Delta DNA, if you don't know them, it's not the dental insurance that we're all familiar with. It's actually an analytics company. And we've been around for about 5 years. And we have a special platform that really helps game developers understand their audience within their app. And by doing that, you get more insights on what your audience is doing and how you can actually serve your audience better. So novice gamers get treated right. Expert gamers get more attention. And then in the end, we have a number of marketing tools that help you turn around and run insights back towards those audiences. So it's a really powerful tool, and it's been around for quite a while. We have an interesting background because analytics can often seem like a really dull topic, but it's not. It's actually quite impressive. What I've found is that the best insights in free-to-play gaming and game design these days come from data. And we have such powerful devices now that we carry around with us all day long that really give us a lot more insight on what we do and how much time we spend with them. And so it's really up to game developers, I think, to harness that power just a little bit and start to understand how your audience really behaves and what they're doing within that app. And once you harness that, you get enormous power in really tailoring your game and making it more adaptable for every segment of your audience. So it's pretty cool stuff. I've been, like Bill had said, I've been in gaming for about 20 years. I actually worked with Ethan a number of years ago at a company called Sega. You might have heard of them. I've also worked at EA and Glue Mobile. I worked at LucasArts for a couple of years as well. I got to play in the Star Wars universe. So I've seen and touched a lot of different things in gaming. But what's, I think, most encouraging these days is that gaming is still evolving, and it's a really exciting time to be in the industry. We've got the growth of VR. We've got mobile hitting new heights every day. There's a lot of stuff to be done. So I encourage you to keep at it if you're building games, whatever you're doing. And if you need anything in data analytics, come talk to us. That's what we're here for. All right?
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Bill Vorberry. I'm with IBM. In IBM land, I was called a Client Technical Leader, or a CTL. I've been in the game space myself for close to 8 years, 6+ with IBM, and several years as independent consultant before joining IBM in the game space. Many people are not aware that IBM is in games. It's like, what, IBM in games? We think of servers, we think of big mainframes, but if you think about it right now, close to 130 million people a day are playing a game on some sort of IBM application or using some form of our technology to have a fun game experience. I've been doing a lot of work with studios, helping them refine assessments, looking at architecture, looking at, we'll talk about this, development operations in the game space, plus helping them with a little bit of fun in there as well. So it's nice to meet you all, and I look forward to having a fun conversation this evening.
Hey everyone, my name's Ethan, and gaming has been my life since I can remember. I'll tell you honestly, my family is frankly the only thing I love more than gaming. That started when I picked up a Nintendo Entertainment System controller when I was in 6th grade. Last year I put on an HTC Vive VR helmet for the first time. And it is the first time since I picked up that NES controller that I felt electrified, that I felt like gaming could do things that no other platform could do. It excited me in exactly the same way, and that's why I shifted to VR. So how many people here have ever played a VR game or tried a VR app? Hands up. Awesome, that is so cool. Okay, so you know what it's like, and you know how magical and transporting those types of experiences are gonna be. I asked Yanzi if she could do me a huge favor and, show just a 1-minute trailer. We just launched our first game at Midas Touch Games on Steam last week, and I wanna show you what we're doing so you can have some context for where I'm coming from. If you can just, slideshow and play from start. There you go. So it looks like there is sound there if you can turn it up. But even without that, I think you guys can get a rough sense of what the experience is like. It's kind of a Rock'em Sock'em Robots type of experience, but you are actually in the physical space, feeling a real sense of presence. It's been so much fun to work on this kind of product, and again, VR really puts you there. So yeah, this is HTC Vive, but as the product moves from early access to full launch, we're also planning to release on the Oculus Rift and the PlayStation VR. And again, this is not an attempt to sell you guys, but I just really, again, wanted to provide context and show you, if you haven't tried the Vive or the Oculus, what PC VR looks like. And mixed reality is the way lots of us are doing it now, showing people actually in the game, and so that's kind of fun to do as well. So yeah, that's me.
Any of the rest of you have any slides or video or anything? Okay, well then why don't we just get right to it. Before we get into what's new in the technologies, you'll have to explain to me maybe a little bit about how you guys make money at this. What is the business model for a game, especially like the one you just showed me? And maybe talk a little bit about how that's changing and how it's evolving, because I know what it was like 20 years ago, but but I don't play games every day. So you want to start with that, Ethan?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. So, the truth is with any new platform, it takes a while to be in a position where you can see significant revenue. What we're doing is, in addition to releasing our own games, we're going to be publishing a middleware solution for physics that's going to be coming out next February. And we believe that that's going to be healthy for the industry. It helps the industry use new tools that make it easier to get away from the uncanny valley of canned animations. But it also allows us, as a small team, to drive revenue from multiple avenues. So in addition to that, of course, we're looking at work for hire opportunities, and have had some really good conversations with people who have major film IPs, things like that. And we're trying to look at every possible way to just keep moving past what's going to be a challenging 2017, just because there are not a ton of headsets out there, and move into what we believe is going to be a very robust 2018 and 2019.
You guys want to add to that here?
I would say really the two dominant modes that we know of these days, especially in mobile, it's going to be premium or free-to-play. And we work primarily with free-to-play developers because that's been the biggest level of success for most games in the mobile space. That's not to say there's still space for premium models as well. And as you just saw with the launch of Super Mario, basically we call it a premium game, but it's free to pay and then it's $10 for the whole game. So those two models really are working well. There is some difficulty, I think, going on right now in free-to-play, in that it takes a certain amount of learning curve and a certain amount of adaptation to typical gameplay models to try to make them a little bit more long-term. And that's where I think there's been some hiccups in the development community around that, because not every methodology works for every style of gameplay.
Can I ask you to pause on that and just
Sure.
explain what you mean by premium content?
Premium would be that you pay for one cost and you get a whole lot of gameplay. So let's say you get 20 or 30 hours for the cost of $7 or $8. Whereas free to play is, it's free to play. I can play as long as I want, and it's free to play. I don't have to buy anything. It's mainly I choose to buy something. I opt in. You know. So a great case in point might be I've been playing The Sims for a while on my tablet, and I have not spent $1 on it yet, and I've played it probably for about a month. You know, and they keep trying to hit me with offers, but I can still keep playing all the way through.
Are you seeing premium content on mobile as well?
Oh yes, yeah. I mean that's how it started. When we got into the industry back, well, I got in the industry in 2005, but Ethan was there too. That was what the primary model. The way of monetizing was you bought a game for $5.99 or $10.99 or whatever it cost, and then I don't know if you guys remember this, but. I think what was the game that did it? Remember the one that dropped to $1 and all of a sudden everybody.
Oh,
Wait, can you all hear okay?
yeah.
Might not be on. Is that on? Is that tested? There we go. Thank you. Sorry, take that. So, at some point, yeah, I don't know if it's working, but Chromag Rally was. I don't know if you remember this, but when the App Store launched in 2007, 2008, there was a lot of premium content, and you could buy stuff for anywhere from $5 to $10, and no one blinked an eye. And then there was the first game I think was Chromag Rally, and there was another one I can't remember the name of it, but they suddenly dropped the price to $1, and that caused a land rush because they went right to the top of the charts, and that was what I saw as the beginning of the whole. Well, I wouldn't say free to play, but it started the 99-cent wars, where everybody basically launched at $1 or $2, and you kept trying to figure out how to adjust your price, and then eventually Apple allowed free to play gaming. And that sort of set off on a whole new realm of things. That was around 2010 or 2011.
And so what's interesting there is that that's a great way to reach as many people as possible, and we've seen some great games come from the free-to-play model. What's been exciting to me though is to see this past week Super Mario Run, because for me, I'm the type of consumer that only wants to pay once. I want to know what the price is up front, and I love games with endings. I love games as a product. I prefer that personally to games as a service, and so it's exciting for me to be able to get that on mobile again. You look at the Steam marketplace, and they have a really good, balanced ecosystem that includes great free-to-play games and great premium games. And I'm hoping that what we see with Super Mario Run is it's the start of that greater balance in the App Store of being able to get both. Because unfortunately, since it's been a little imbalanced, I found myself having to carry my Vita with me all the time so that I can continue to get great premium experiences. I'd love to have it on one device if I could.
So I guess what I'm hearing is that the way, my question, how's the business model evolving, and what to look for is maybe a different mix of premium and free play. Is that what you'd say?
That's what I think would be best to serve the greatest number of customers. Actually, one other thing to say about that, if this works, oh, it does work, wow, is that I see players in two different categories. I see ones who love breadth, and by that I mean, they like to buy, 7, 8, 9, 10 games a month, and just, they always want what's new, and that's exciting to them. And then there are ones who love depth, right? The people who find Minecraft or League of Legends, and they say, this is my game, and this is all I want to play, and I want to talk to my friends who also love this game, and we don't care what else is out there because this is what we love the most. Those are two very different types of players, and I think recently we've seen that the App Store is very good at getting the guys that love depth, but they need to get better at the people who love breadth. And that's where, again, I think something like Super Mario Run's a great model to kick that off.
Hey, Bill, I want to turn this over to you to talk. I know you got some background in esports,
Yes.
in esports
Yes.
businesses. So maybe, first of all, tell us a little bit about what that is, and then tell me how you identify your customers, especially you have this term, missing customers.
Yes,
in
yes.
esports.
So
Okay.
again, esports, it's really, I would say, exploded in the media the last 2 years, even though technically esports has been around for close to 15 to 20 years. So when we talk about customers in esports, the executives that are trying to put together these esports teams and esports businesses, they usually have one stream of information or one stream of data to get their knowledge of the customer. In the IT world, kind of the geek world that I'm in, there's a term we use called dark data. Dark data is that data that's out there either in the Twitter sphere, the blog sphere, a lot of the different streaming services that you use every day. and those executives don't have access to that dark data. So what we've been doing to help them with that dark data is that we've been bringing together some cognitive approaches to actually gather that data and present it to them, so that, number one, they can ask the question, is the game that we're developing, the game we're changing, going to impact my bottom line in esports? So think about it, is that a famous game like Dota 2 or StarCraft has been in the market for many years. Is that same type of economy in the game economy going to be the same in esports? So for example, as an executive, I want to know, am I going to be making that same amount of money on the actual physical sale of the game and invest that same type of energy into the esports market? Now, the way I've been identifying customers in the esports worldwide is looking at, number one, is that do they have a powerful team? Is that team successful? Do they have the right tools to put a team together? So we've been using what I call that dark data again to help them find recruits, help them find the talent, help them identify the right questions to ask my business. Is this game being produced correctly? Is it going to be trending? Is it something even for the esports community? Because the esports community is a lot different from traditional sports. Traditional sports, you think about the NFL, you think about international soccer teams, where the management, that information comes kind of top down. It's like, we're going to have this production today, this commercial is going to be placed here in this show today, which is different because esports, the community drives what happens in esports. So the community tells the publishers, the community tells the game developers that we want to produce a game this type of fashion. We want to watch that type of game, because not every game is designed for the esports world. Because you think about it, it's a visual experience. You have 50,000 to 70,000 people in a stadium perhaps watching it live. And then you have another 1 million to 2 million streaming that game at the same time. So there's a lot of different dynamics that go into esports versus traditional sports.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to come back to you on a couple of things. But before we do that, the thing about games, they say that this is like a really risky industry for investors because it's so content focused. And, we might know, especially those of you in the audience, you might know how to make a particular piece of software do something, but how do you engage somebody's emotions, which is what you really have to do to get them to spend the kind of money on the premium content that you're talking about or play the game. And Ethan, I want to start with you. How do you impulse emotions in a game?
Sure, it's a great question. So I think that it's one of the most important things that we need to learn how to do in games. Sony just released a game that they've been working on for almost 10 years. It's called The Last Guardian. Has anyone here heard of The Last Guardian? Okay, we got some people. Have you tried it? Have you had a chance to? Okay, you have to, all right? The reason it's so important to look at is that they didn't want to release this game until they could make people cry, and they can. I saw on Facebook, one of my closest friends, he posted a picture of his children bawling watching the end of this game, right? Because they'd grown so attached to this beautiful creature, right? And it was about the relationship between a little boy and a giant dragon, effectively, that looks like a cross between a bird and a dog. And it's just magic. When I was recently talking to a licensor in Hollywood, and we were looking at potential partnerships, the first question they asked me is, in VR, if you're going to do a game based on one of our properties, what emotion are you going to try to drive from people? And I think that's the great first place to start with games. Yanzi, could we run just 10 seconds of a clip? I want to show you something else that we're working on. So we're working on a simulation that's totally physics-based with a dog. And if you could go to the dog. Okay. So I want to set the stage. Okay, we're going to be releasing a game in early access where you're a young person who's just about to go off to college. It's your last day before you go to college and start adulthood. And during that last day, you have one last chance to connect with your dog, who's grown up with you, who's been one of your best friends for 7 years. And you want to have a great experience with that dog that dog will remember when you come back and visit, right? And that dog will just jump right into your lap because he remembers that great last day just before you went to college. And the thing is being able to interact with a pet like this using real physics, it in VR becomes something totally different. There was a woman who came into our office and she started playing this, and she was saying, this is the softest fur I've ever touched. But there's nothing in her hands, right? The way that works is because the physics are doing exactly what they're supposed to do to give you a realistic experience, and your brain completes the rest of the experience, right? And that's the difference between watching a 3D movie and actually feeling presence, actually being in a position where VR transports you and gives you an emotional experience. That's the future. You know, movies have been doing it for as long as we can remember. I mean, how many kids here, you know, in 1982 cried when they saw E.T., right? That was me for sure, right? And games are going to take that to a whole new level, especially in VR. So that's where emotion's important.
Does he bite?
He can.
So another important part of emotions in games is like right now a lot of the folks in the game community are concerned or chatting about the environment. So it's a big impact on our planet. Whether you're political or apolitical, you do notice that environment is a concern at times. So there's quite a number of games now that are coming on the market where they want to engage the player into a cognitive or game experience where you can go through a river, understand what some kind of pollution is going on, and be involved in that VR experience floating down the river trying to pick up all the trash, for example. Those are real-life things that can impact within a game experience itself. So that's how it brings some of those emotions and impact, and you can have discussions with the game about what's going on. So there's quite a number of game examples out there that are doing that right now, too.
I'm going to add one point to that. That's just that, you know, an emotional state is such a vital piece of playing a game and how engaged you are with it. And we look at it sort of as a curve. If you're constantly playing, you're riding a curve between either anxiety or happiness, or, you know, anxiety and boredom, or happiness and loving a game. And so it's important to recognize wherever you are in that game, what that state is, and what data points are telling you where that user is and whether or not they're happy or whether they're bored. And that's an important piece because you want to try to keep those players engaged longer. So if at some point during this narrative, the dog either bites me or maybe walks away and runs off the screen, hopefully the developers can recognize that and say, you know what, get him to come back onto the screen, or get him to, you know, maybe it gives you suddenly a bone that you can then throw and attract him back. That's the vital piece, I think. And a lot of times that gets missed, so.
Okay, thanks. I want to come back to the revenue model again, since that's, I'm all about the money, I guess. I hate to go from a picture of petting a dog to talking about how to make money off that. But, you know, so part of it's the premium content, and you guys didn't say this, but I'm assuming that it's advertising revenue that pays for the free content. I mean, people aren't doing this because they like dogs, right? So that's a cost per impression, right?
Well, actually, in VR in the PC space, it's very much a premium model, and so it's pay up front. And I feel it's a great honor to, sincerely, a great honor to be able to create products for people who are willing to pay up front, specifically because those same people are what enable me as a consumer who loves games to play the types of games that I love. And there is a category of players who really think it's worthwhile to pay up front and are excited to do that and to try new experiences. And there's a sustainably high number of those customers too.
Okay, interesting.
I would actually poll the audience. Let me ask you guys real quick. How many have spent, in the last month, have spent $5 on games? Raise your hands. Okay, and then how many have spent over $5, like $10? Okay, and then how many have spent over like 20? Okay, so it starts to narrow down a little bit. How many have spent over 50? I know you've spent a lot of money. He just let on earlier. So you can see there's a curve, right? There's a window, right? And we all want to spend certain amounts each month, and that's the real balance in game design, is trying to figure out what's that price point, and that's the revenue model that we're all looking at. So,
okay, so speaking a little bit about the advertising model, so I know that cost per impressions has been going up, right? The costs have been increasing. And for these small developers, I mean, that's a problem. Let's go with you, David, since this is really your business is dealing with that problem. I mean, how do these game developers deal with the fact that, you know, promoting a game is pretty expensive?
yeah, it's a challenge, right? Because in mobile, the model has shifted to cost per install, and it's a hard model because I think right now I saw in October, the last time I checked an index, Fixu has an index which you can look at, and they publish kind of the cost per installs. And I believe for Android it was $4.16, and iOS was like $6.75 per install, which means if you do the math, you're going to spend, say, $6.75 to get someone to download your iOS game. At that point, you're hoping they're going to spend at least $10 or more to try to make a profit back. So you're always subtracting that marketing cost from what you are spending, right? And so that's a challenging model because you better have a lot of content that's worth $10 or higher for that iOS user. And for that Android user, again, it was $4. So if your game costs, $6 or $7 per user to make it, and then you're spending $4, you're left with $3 in profit. And so it's a tough model. It's getting harder and harder. So there's some ways to combat that. And one of the tools we have, for example, on our platform is we can actually look at where you acquire your users, like what channels you get them. If you get them from Facebook or Tapjoy or from AdColony, any one of those demand sources out there, we can then track and see how useful those players are within the first 5 or 6 days of playing that game and whether or not they've spent money. And then you can calculate, we have an LTV prediction model that will actually calculate out 90 days how much they're likely going to spend. And so it helps you early on to say, all right, I'm buying from these 10 sources, but these 4 are the most effective ones based on the prediction model I have. I'm therefore going to focus all my money on those 4 or 5 sources. And that's a useful tool for a lot of UA managers early on to start kind of optimizing their spending.
Wow, that's really sophisticated analytics. Can you just, another comment?
I just wanted to add, yeah, it's I know folks at DNA call it a granite tough business, and I love that phrase because it really is. It's hard for customers sometimes to understand as well. Here's how I try to explain it to my friends and my wife's friends when they're looking at it from a customer standpoint. You said $6.75 for cost per install, right? So that's how much they're paying, to get a customer in. The bigger challenge is that only when you're getting customers from that route, only on average about 1% of those customers are going to actually spend money. And so the people that you bring in from that approach, you have to get the customers on average to spend $675 each on average to break even on that approach. And so the game has to subsequently be tuned to be able to drive that as a minimum level of spend. And that's a challenging thing to balance. And also I think a lot of customers don't understand when they walk in and they see, Play Now free, that really these games are being designed to get a lot of money out of the top end of players because that's how it has to work to be able to support a $6.75 cost per install.
And before we all get glazed over with the math, remember the typical conversion rates are about 1 or 2%, right? So on a big game right now, you may have 10 or 10 million downloads, say, but 1% are converting. And then of that 1%, probably 0.005% are the actual high value players, the ones that are spending lots of money. That's where you make the most of your profit. So.
Okay, so speaking of profit and the revenue streams, we haven't talked about purchases yet, but is that a big part of this, what you call in-app purchases? And what's a good mix for how much should a game company rely on that?
Well, I think first and foremost, in-app purchase is crucial because it's got to be a great game. You want to have people to come back and spend money within the game. But now with the rise of advertising on mobile, especially, it's advertising can be a much more important and valuable part of the mix. You can treat it as part of your IAP and as part of your game economy so that for those other 97% of players who don't spend any money, but you can show them ads and they don't care to see ads, you're going to earn money off that. And that actually starts to make your bottom line go up higher. When we did it, I did a mobile ad strategy with DNA, and we saw typically in our game, in the games we ran ads in, we saw an increase of about 2 to 3 cents per ARPDAU, or average revenue per daily active user. And so that all of a sudden made all the producers sit up and go, we had this culture where people were like, no, we're not going to do ads, we're not going to do it. Then we ran the ads and did a test for about 6 months, and all of a sudden the producers started looking, going, hey, my numbers are going up, what's going on? I'm like, people are watching ads. Oh, that's great, can we do more of those? So we saw an increase. And if it's done right and implemented in the right way, it's a valuable piece of your economy. You shouldn't ignore it. So.
Yeah, I think that advertising is interesting, especially when the customer can choose to engage with it, right? So if you're in a position, say, where you have lost a life in a mobile phone game, and you can either wait for 2 minutes to continue, or watch an ad to wait 30 seconds to be able to continue. That's opt-in advertising, which works much, much better than like forcing you to watch an ad 10 minutes in, because that's when it's programmed to provide you with that ad.
So, Bill, you and I chatted earlier today about what might be another revenue stream, or another market, I'd say, and that's using gaming for education, for training, for employee engagement. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about that. Can you tell me what IBM and what you are doing in that area?
Sure. So that's a very good topic. So in addition to working with casual game studios, I've been doing work with what I call serious games or gamification. So what that is essentially is taking game mechanics that we may be using in everyday fun games and putting that into a business setting, for example. And quite heavily, you may have been seeing the ads for IBM for using Watson. So we've been using IBM Watson in these experiences as well. So actually creating that experience, having that cognitive interchange to either train, adapt, or learn. So for example, take a place of cybersecurity, which is a big concern in today's environment. We've taken a game and created a cybersecurity training game where Watson can either be your coach or your adversary in the game. So you can actually train your cybersecurity specialist to look for those different nuances in the cloud world, finding the cybersecurity threats. So you're engaging with Watson, you almost have like an avatar like World of Warcraft, for example, and Watson can either be your coach or your black hat, fighting against you in those examples. Some areas that we've been working on quite a bit is education. We've been doing some work. You've all played Minecraft, I'm assuming. We've developed what I call a medical Minecraft version, where some students in Austin, Texas, took the version of Minecraft, we infused it with Watson, and using a platform we have in IBM called Bluemix, which is a platform as a service, they engaged that with the Unity game engine, and Bluemix created their version of fighting diseases in the Minecraft game real time. So that's another example we've been doing. So healthcare, retail, banking. So one of the problems right now in industry is that many times employees may not be engaged. I think I saw a number recently where like 70% of employees may not be engaged in their day-to-day work. So we've been using games quite a bit to try to re-engage employees, if you will, bring them back into the workplace. So that's several examples we've been doing recently in the serious game space.
Serious game, that's what you call that.
Yep, serious games
space.
and or gamification, exactly.
Gamification. Okay. Anything to add to that, anybody, before we move on? So, I want to make sure we get to this tonight. You can't really talk about anything anymore without mentioning China. And it sounds to me like China has actually done some things that are kind of pioneering in your field. So two things. Could somebody, first of all, explain what a drop rate is and what drop rate transparency is, and whether that's a good thing, because I understand they have that in China. Whoever wants to start.
Sure. So it's been recently announced that at the, I think it's April of next year, China is going to require that companies that have games with gacha boxes disclose drop rates. Now, let me explain what that is. So if you've ever played a game that has a box that has random elements in it, and you don't know what's going to be in it until you buy it and open it up, that's a loot crate, or it's a gacha box. That is what we're talking about. Up until this point, no one has had to disclose drop rates, and so you can have a very desirable, heavily advertised character, say, on a card that on average, you may have to pull so many times that it'll cost you literally thousands of dollars to get the card, but they're not obligated to tell you that. That's a challenge in terms of customers having enough information to make informed purchasing decisions. The fact that China is making it required to present that information is wonderful, because what it does is it puts players in a position in which they have finally enough information to make informed purchasing decisions, which builds trust, which puts them in a position in which they have the confidence to know that they're being given by the company that they're investing so much time and money into the respect to be able to move forward on purchases with full transparency.
I would just add to that to further that point, the fact that China is such a large market and there's billions of dollars and billions of users at play, that's a pretty momentous move, because that means if developers in China are doing that, they're going to start doing it in other countries as well. So I think it's probably a short time until, you know, either the EU wakes up and makes that some part of law, and probably the US will get it together too and start publicizing those drop rates. I think it's better transparency overall in the industry, and that matters.
So some of these China games, can you talk a little bit about how they might going this way? How do they succeed in the U.S. market? Any advice? Because we do have some. I think we do have some China game developers here.
I can start with that a little bit. I used to work for a little background when I worked at a Japanese game company, and also I worked with a lot of Chinese developers. We used to see a lot of companies come to us and say, you know, how do we publish in the Western market? And there's no real easy like recipe, but I think some of the common things we'd see, one was that the gameplay styles are very different in Chinese games from what I could play and what I saw versus what's in the West. And so a lot of times, several of the Chinese games we looked at were very busy in terms of UI and interface, because they're able to just process a lot more and they want to play very deep, rich experiences like that. Whereas I think a lot of Western gamers, at least in the US, sort of get confused, and it's very hard to get into a game if you're thrown a lot of menus and a long onboarding process. So oftentimes we said, you know, that game engine, they had beautiful game engines, oh my God. But that game engine would be great, but we want to simplify it. We need to strip out some of the non-important elements and really get down to the core of what's fun about that game, the meta game. And that was what helped them. And then the second thing I would say is the first time user experience is vital. It's crucial. And as anyone knows, anytime you download a game, that first 60 seconds of how you play it really determines whether you're going to keep it or delete it. And so that's where it's really important to look at that, because I think the tolerance for those kind of game experiences where you play it for 5 or 6 minutes and get in is very high in Asian countries versus in the West. In the West, if I play something, I'm speaking for myself here, but I know a lot of my counterparts as well, if I play something and I'm not engaged within the first 3 minutes or so, I'm probably not going to come back to it. And that's where we see the drop off. And so I think, you know, my advice would be, if you've got a great game engine, come shop it around, talk to publishers, show it off, but then don't be afraid of stripping out the best parts and making that game engine into something totally different for this market here. Because I think you need to tailor to each market sometimes. And there's oftentimes you can find a really winning formula, taking an element from one game that's really awesome and bringing it to a new market with some different additive parts to it. So
Sounds like we just have a lower attention span here.
You would think so, but I don't know. It's hard to characterize.
Well, there's some other areas too. For example, it's like it was mentioned quite frequently is that the difference in cultures, right? So one thing that we've been doing too, which may help the China market grow in the United States, is again use a cognitive experience to develop. You know, what are people wanting? What are people wanting to play? How do you build that strategy to do that? Another good area too is that I'll be touching on this a bit, is that in the world of development, what we call development operations in the game studios, is that having that constant feedback into the gameplay may also help that. So if I'm a Chinese-based game and I'm going to start to do some development here in the United States, I may want to use some continuous feedback from what the U.S. market is pulling from their dark data, feed that back real time to the development teams so they can have that actually during the development sprint of the game, right? So by taking those combinations as well and look at the factors. I think another thing we also, which may be important, is that, you know, in the world of esports too, is that the esports competition has, you know, kind of blossomed or bloomed in the Asia market as well, and take some of those same strategies and bring those into the partnership here in the United States and use some of those models to develop a strategy.
So I think one thing that Chinese games do extraordinarily well is they recognize the power of social. And oftentimes the games that make the most money are also the ones that work almost like Facebook or Twitter in terms of giving people a place to talk about something that they all have a common interest in, but start to feel like family. So, you know, I did a deep dive, was doing some study on some of these games, and I was seeing some really remarkable quotes in forums from some of the Chinese games. There's one woman who said that she was very, very shy. And she had a hard time talking to people, and was was just not feeling like she was fitting in at work, but this game gave her a feeling of connection, a feeling of family, and it meant everything to her. There's another case where there was a man who had a disabled son at home, and so he had to put all of his time and energy into caring for his child. And the one thing that he could do to connect with other people is play this game, and he found great family and solidarity, and actually a channel to talk about his difficulties that even his family didn't want to give as much time as this community was willing to give to help him work through it. And so I think those social elements, that's what makes the Chinese games great, and that's what I think is going to make them great in the West as well.
Ethan, is that a market for you, China?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What's interesting is distribution becomes a little bit different because, what China has is a lot of public spaces to play games. They've always had net cafes and things like that. And so what's becoming increasingly popular is the idea of VR net cafes, where you can go and try these games, subscription, so that you can, play a bunch of them if you're lucky enough to have them at home is popular as well. But yeah, China is really excited about VR, and we're definitely excited to talk to them about it.
We've had something sort of like that over here, right on Market Street. I tried that HTC Vive, and I was chased by zombies, and I picked things up, and so it was a little bit like, I guess, having a public a VR cafe. But what do you think, is that the future of VR, do you think, or what do you think we can look forward to in 2017? Oh,
that's a really important thing to look at. I think that the best thing about VR is that it is something everyone can appreciate. So I brought just a Gear VR, a mobile VR headset, over to my father-in-law's 80th birthday. And sat him down, and this is a guy who 10 years ago I showed him the Xbox 360 when it came out and Cars in HD, and he fell asleep, literally fell asleep, right? But now he puts on this device and he goes into an app that's called Street View VR, right, which allows you to say the name of any street address in the world, and it'll take you there, and you'll stand there in full 360, being able to look at the sky and the ground below you. And he started going to the place where he grew up as a kid at a farm, right? And he showed us what that was like. We'd never seen it before, but now we could. He showed us where he raised my wife, in D.C., and he just couldn't put it down. And I've never seen someone connect so immediately. What was even cooler, though, was that my nephew, who is 11 years old, who's flipped Fallout 4 times, he said that if he had one of these headsets in his house, he'd trade his Xbox One for that, right? So that's really compelling in terms of reaching all ages and how ubiquitous the experience can be when you find the right app, right? So I think really the big thing is not to just make arena shooters. We see a lot of those right now, and I love them. I have a bunch of them. But we need more than that, and we need to recognize that people of every age are going to find something they love in VR and really try to deliver that.
Especially, we've also been seeing the growth of drones as well. So there's a new drone games that are out in the market right now as well. So think about that. You're playing in your VR space. You're commanding a drone. You may be able to connect with some of the information out there, which we call IoT or Internet of Things. So all that data that comes in, you can play that real time, have that full-time VR experience with the Internet of Things data while you're flying the drone, and the experience just, you're physically in the game, right, with all that going on. So you have the cognitive, you have the IoT, you have the VR experience, and that really makes a good connection in the gameplay itself.
Are we talking about 2017 predictions? Is this crystal ball?
We are, and let me add one more thing to that, because
Okay.
just as you were talking, I was thinking, God, when's the cost of this stuff going to come down? Where it's, or is it?
Well, I do see the cost coming down, especially in a lot of the development platforms. So we often talk about cloud in the development of the game space. So as a lot of these development studios and the environment goes on the what I call the open source cloud environment, those costs are going to start to come down because a lot of the different competitors, IBM, Amazon, Google, AWS, all those competitors are now kind of merging their technology. We're using technology like Docker to bring environments back and forth. So if we're thinking about the China market, I have a team in China, I have a team in Singapore, I have a team in Cincinnati or Atlanta, or what have you. You can be able to transport your development environment around the world very cost effectively using an open source, that open cloud community. So it's a very, I see the cost coming down because all these technologies are now merging. One thing that's very cool Again, I work for IBM, so I admit I'm guilty. But one of the things that's very cool is that IBM does not lock you into a technology. So if you want to develop a technology on a Bluemix platform and perhaps move it to Azure or move it to Google, that's perfectly okay to do that, because all those environments are transferable, which can bring the cost down, so you can converse with your China team, converse with your team in Singapore, converse with your team in Denmark, and do it all very cost effective.
Are you trying to make IBM cool? I'm kidding. I'm joking.
Yes.
I'm joking because my dad actually worked for IBM for 18 years. It's a great company. So crystal ball here, I'm going to say a couple things. Two things that pop out for me in gaming right now. One is connection, and Ethan had touched on that with VR, which is what you play with people around you matters, right? And so that's the big part about gaming is, to me, one of the eye-opening experiences I had this year was playing a PlayStation VR headset and playing with 3 other guys. And I had the headset on, and I was playing the monster and walking down the street and knocking over buildings, and the other 3 guys were throwing things at me using the controllers. And so to me, the shared experience that you have in gaming is what really makes it stand out. It's that oh wow factor of, did you see that? That was amazing. So as long as we keep propagating that, games will be successful. The second thing I want to touch on is choice. And to me, choice, what's so exciting about that is being able to play when you want, where you want, and using whatever hardware you can. And I still think there's a bit of work to do in this area, because to me, if Ethan's playing on a PlayStation and I've got an Xbox, I can't necessarily play online games with him, which is kind of a miss, right? And I think that's a big loss. But that's the way the console systems work. Unfortunately, on PC and mobile, we're starting to see those walls break down a little bit. So it's pretty exciting. But what I look forward to is the day and age where, whether or not I'm playing on a big screen or Ethan's playing on his PS Vita and William's playing on his tablet, but we can all connect into a game and play at the same time. And I think we're probably a few years away from that, but that's where it's going to get really exciting. And it should be something similar to like Netflix. You watch it on a laptop, you watch it on a big screen, you watch it on a tablet, but you have that level of choice. As soon as we get that level of choice in gaming, that's where it's going to start to be really cool. So maybe that's not 2017, that's probably a lot farther out.
Bill, is open source contributing to that? You mentioned that in your answer.
Yeah, so there's a lot of contributions going on in open source right now. So a lot of what I call the big players in the market, such as Amazon, Google, some of them you've heard of terms like Lumberyard, for example, which is a game environment. We have the Unity game engine, which is in our Bluemix environment. So a lot of those different components, you can build a game in one environment and easily transport to another, so you're not like locked in per se. So if I'm a Azure fan, I maybe want to develop something in Azure, then move it over to Bluemix, or vice versa. I may want to develop something in Bluemix and then move it over to Azure. So that open source portability of using simple containers we call Docker, takes your environment, virtually moves it to another environment very simply. It's all been proven. It's out there in the field right now, every day.
So yeah, just crystal balling. I think near term we're going to see something really exciting in March. I think Nintendo is going to crush it with the Nintendo Switch. I think that people are on the fence as to whether or not it will work. I think it's going to be massive, and I think it's going to dwarf what the Wii did, because I think it is recognizing that you have a whole generation of players that want to continue to play the game that they're playing on their TV, but get very little access to their TV, and now they can take that experience with them wherever they go. Also, the fact that it sounds like they might actually get a head-mounted display out, that's what some of the patent rumors are, could give you a Gear VR type of experience within that Nintendo ecosystem. So never count those guys out is what I'd say.
Any other advances in technology that the panel wants to talk about for 2017 that we should expect?
2017, okay. So Jan, can I get a driver for a moment? On the computer. So if you can jump to my deck just for a moment here. I'm just going to stand up for a moment here so I can see. So I'm going to shift a little bit. I apologize to the camera operator, Tim. So yes, please. Yes, please. So if you can drive down, let's see, once the deck comes up here. So if you can slide down a couple slides. What I want to do, too, is kind of go into the areas. That's all the game environments that we're in right now, just to give you an impression of about what IBM does. So we're in quite a number of companies. So if you can slide down, I think it's slide 8 or 9. I want to get into some of the Watson pieces real quick here. Real quick. Okay, all right. So here, let's stop here just for 1 second here. So we touch on esports real quick here just for a moment. So one of the things that we talk about is that in the world of esports is very similar to traditional sports in many cases. So what we can do is when we take a look at esports or traditional things like engagement, performance, optimization, stadium, team, and the fans, some of those things can really be brought to life using a cognitive approach. So if you can jump down to the next slide, I think, which has some of the Watson. So imagine this. So when we talk about some of the monetization around esports or in games, you kind of want to know what's going on with your player or your fan that you don't even know that you have. So that's one of the business cases right now in esports is that the executives may not know who their fan is. So what Watson does is goes out there into the blogosphere and the internet, if you will, and finds all the social connections that go on with a player or a fan or all the emotions that go on into a game. Some of the big businesses in esports, you may have heard of Twitch or some of the other streaming services out there. Sometimes they may hold on to that data, right? But some of the publishers that are producing the big games, they may want to have other access to the data so they can personalize that experience to their fan. So what Watson can do is it'll find your sources of what you enjoy doing. It'll find what you may do in your off time. So if you're Facebooking or if you're on LinkedIn or if you're using your Twitter, what Watson will do out there is kind of go out there and personalize that experience and give that data back to the executives of the esports teams. So that's one of the 2017 crystal ball things that I see in the world of esports. And if you can go one more slide, Yanzi. And also, I see some other areas around video and monetization and bringing that video together. I don't know if some of you may have seen, we had an example, a movie came out recently called Morgan. It was put out by Fox Studios. And what we did was we took Watson and sent Watson to film school. So Watson learned about the movie and then created a trailer for the movie. So what we can do now is that we can take that video data from post-game analysis, esports analysis, and crunch it through a cognitive experience and give that data back to the teams. Like, for example, if I'm a Fnatic team member or a Fnatic manager, I want to know what my team is doing, right? So if I'm a League of Legends player, a Fnatic player, or ESL kind of business, I want to know what kind of data is out there.
That's pretty amazing, actually. I mean, I think we've covered just about every technology here in this panel: VR, AI, big data. I'm really curious about that. Is that something that's being implemented now, or do you think
it sure is? Yep, we're using the games live right now, so we're taking that experience. One area that we didn't have a chance to touch on too much was development operations, which is a big key between if we're looking at different markets. Say I'm a team member in Belarus. I'm a team member in Sydney, and I want to keep all that coordination together. So if you could, Jan, if you could jump up just one or two slides toward the development operations area, I can touch on that real quickly here. Yep, let's stop there. That slide, yep. Number 5. So those of you that have experience in the game market and those that may not have experience in the game market, when we've gone through the life cycle, a lot of studios start to use Agile or using Scrum, which is a form of methodology for developing. So Agile and Scrum is only like one half of that game business. The other piece that we want to bring together when we say DevOps or development operations is a way to do the release and deploy of the game, as well as to monitor and optimize the game. So when we think about the DevOps models, there's tools that we use. We use Azure, we use Bluemix, we use those different technologies to be able to bring together the full picture of not only the Agile and Scrum teams in the development studio, but also the monetization, the marketing teams, so they can have continuous feedback, right? So if I'm developing a game, I may be a Unity game engine developer, I want to have that information back to my sprint team real time, so I can actually develop that game more efficiently, quicker in the next sprint. And that's kind of the mindset when we say DevOps or development operations. So if you can go one more slide down, Yanzi, then I'll kind of wrap up that area. So when we look at DevOps, it's a whole culture, it's a whole mindset. So we look at training, we look at coding, we look at delivering, we look at running and managing. So a good, what I call a good, healthy DevOps team is one that's able to interact with the business, interact with the agile sprint teams, interact with the entire culture that's buying their product, and be able to provide that full life cycle or feedback. There's quite a number of tools in the market. There's open source tools, there's proprietary tools, Azure, Google, IBM again, all have various tools to do that. But the key is to be able to modernize your development process but not get ahead of the curve, so to speak. So if I'm developing 4 pieces of code today, I want 4 pieces of code out the door. I don't want them to stack up. So DevOps helps you manage that entire process using different technology, monitoring, and speed to life, as well as the open source community, which we talked about earlier, bringing all that data together across different countries, different environments, all at the same time.
Okay, wow, that's a lot. So we're going to open it up to questions in a few minutes. Before we do, I just want to make sure that our panelists have gotten across all the points that they want to get across here to the audience about the market, where we're going. This is developments, what's new for gaming. So is there anything else that we should talk about here before we open it up? Anything you want to mention? Okay. Any questions from the audience here? Questions for our panel? You know, while you're thinking about that, I've got one. I mean, as you're talking, I'm just wondering, because like I said, there's so much here. There's so many different elements, and I've heard so many different ways to monitor this. I mean, what are the key metrics for somebody who might be wanting to get into this industry that they should be watching, especially in 2017? I mean, what do you as industry people look at generally? You know what I mean? As metrics for measuring your success and trying to see where the trends are and where things are going?
I would say that the couple of the metrics that we see as particularly valuable at Delta DNA is one is engagement, how much time people spend within the app, and whether or not, you know, how often they come back to play the app. So you're looking at you know, retention levels of day 1, day 7, day 14, beyond. Those are really vital metrics to look at and constantly monitor, because that curve changes quickly. And then I would also say one of the things we look at is lifetime value is an important one. When you're looking at not only the value of what that user spent, but the time spent in the game and the engagement they have with the game. And there's a couple different ways to measure that. It's how long have they interacted with the game, how far do they get into the game, how deep do they get. We're looking right now, we're modeling curves where we can see, you know, for example, we can look at how many people have spent money on each level of the game, and you start to see different curves for different sets of users. Novice users might get in and not spend anything until level 10 or 15, whereas advanced users get in and spend around level 5. But you can model those different curves and start to adapt your marketing messaging and your strategy to attract different levels of players. So that's kind of the stuff we look at. But I would say number one really is engagement. How long do they spend in the game? How quickly do they get in? Whether or not they leave or not. But all those things can be affected and tweaked very easily. So it's an important couple metrics to look at.
And just to add that, we were chatting about StarCraft earlier. So one of the things that go on in the game industry is we have a term that's called a player telemetry. That's either the game is too difficult or it could be too easy. So what we can sometimes do to help the marketing team is try to use some of that feedback, analytical cognitive feedback, to perhaps adjust the telemetry of the game. So we don't want to make it too easy or too difficult. That's one of the keys that we're using in the esports world right now, is that some of the champion teams, I'm a team in New Zealand or if I'm a team in Europe, some of those teams may not want to be put in certain brackets based on skill, experience. So traditionally, going way back in history, South Korea was a very powerful esports environment, right? So if I'm a new team from France, would I want to be put against South Korea and be wiped out in the first round? Probably not. So we were using some of that player telemetry to kind of adjust the teams. Kind of think about the Harry Potter sorting hat, right? So Harry Potter was able to be put in different houses based on what the hat said, and we could almost use that same kind of technology using Watson to sort the teams out using that telemetry or the magic sorting hat.
So coming from the just pure marketing side for premium products specifically, what we're looking at now is reach. So what's valuable to us is if we're able to build relationships with influencers that have a really dedicated audience. You know, we do everything we can to give them what they need to be able to cover our game and make their viewers happy. So there was a site that does a fantastic set of YouTube videos that I was working with and helping this past week. They have 7 million followers, and so we were actually having the engineers in real time build the things they needed in the game to be able to show it in mixed reality using their platform. And so that type of connection with editorial outlets is getting tighter and tighter. And again, the first foot in the door for getting that to work is working with people who have huge reach.
Question from our audience.
Well, first of all, let's have a quick round of applause for our panel.
Thank you.
So
Thank
if you
you.
have a question, raise your hand. I'll come by with a microphone. Ideally, stand up so that way we have some good sound quality. Raise your hand if you have a question. Hang on.
Hey, my name is John, and I was most recently working at Electronic Arts. I wanted to continue the crystal ball prediction and get your thoughts on what the mobile game industry might look like in 2017. From what I've heard, 2016 was a year of more game consolidation in terms of the gaming studios and also the use of IP-based games, whether movies or celebrities, to help as a response to rising acquisition costs. Do you see those trends continuing, or is there something else that's new?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna say this. I think it's interesting to look at potential black swans, things that you would never expect to happen. But you can see a narrative where it's possible. There's one game this year that I've spent money on that's free to play in mobile, and that is CSR2. And the reason is that it is the fairest and most transparent game in the top 100 as far as I'm concerned, right? And that's because the two base currency rates are not offset from real dollar currency. So $3 gets you 300 gold coins, $5 gets you 500 gold coins. So when you're buying a 1,500 gold coin car, you know exactly what it costs, and that's awesome, right? Even the gacha, you can skip it altogether by buying outright cars that are just as powerful, if not more powerful, than the best cars that are in the gacha. So I've been able to have the joy of playing with complete transparency in spending from beginning to end. And it's a top 30 grossing game. It's working really, really well. And so what I see is, again, in this granite tough business, you're gonna have one company that says, you know what? We're gonna put empathy and emotional intelligence first. We're gonna put caring for customers first. That's more important than analytics. That's more important than near-term revenue. We're gonna do that because we're gonna build a relationship with customers that's gonna last 10 years. We wanna be Apple and Nintendo. We don't wanna be Firestone or Chase. We want to build a relationship with customers based on trust, and they are going to, whoever this one company may be, it might be Zynga, I just said CSR2, right? They're going to be in a position to change the tenor of the entire market, and it's gonna be about putting customers first. And I think that is what's going to start to happen in 2017.
Test.
So if we're still in the crystal ball, I want to back up a bit on the comment about the emotional attachment, like the puppy dog or the VR experience. I don't know, have any of you seen the game Dragon the Cancer?
Oh, that Dragon Cancer.
Yes. Yeah, so very popular game where you're engaging in the family's experience as their child suffers through cancer, right? So I think those types of games are coming up in addition to the IP type games that are going to be attached to movies and characters and sound bites, right? Because you can bring in that virtual experience, you can bring the movie into the game, you can create that experience related to a very popular movie that's close to us, like Star Wars or Superman or what have you, right? So I see a number of those coming down the pipe as well.
I'm just going to say that 2017 is probably going to be even harder than 2016 because there's still some consolidation that has to happen. I think you guys might have seen the news today that's coming up that Kabam has effectively sold off a large chunk of their company to Netmarble over in Korea, which is a big deal. It's about, I think they didn't disclose financials, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of about $800 million. To me, that says that's a pretty big company that's saying, you know what, we're not going to compete in this space anymore. And so that's a little worrisome, right? So business-wise, there's some stuff to watch out for. It's going to get tougher, but that doesn't mean that quality gameplay experiences are going to go away. I think they're going to continue to evolve, right? And we know indies, I look at it kind of like the Hollywood model in that there's IP movies and IP games that always come out, and you can get a really premium value for that. You know, if you want to play a Star Wars or a Transformers or something like that, you'll go for those kind of games. They may or not be as cutting edge as you like, because those companies don't always take those risks, but there'll be something that's worth that money. And then yet there's these emotional experiences and these smaller games that tend to be more indie developed or maybe from smaller companies that really pull you in. And those tend to come at a better price point. And those are the kind of things that start to get you back into it long term. And I think those are going to pop up more and more. We live in a great time right now because the way I see it, we've got all this choice in terms of platforms, and yet there's a lot of content available. And so you can spend a lot of time, you know, on different devices. I laugh because I watch my 10-year-old daughter pick up an iPad, and that's all she's ever played on. She loves the iPad. And so there's a whole generation of kids that are coming up right now that are experiencing games in a whole different way than, you know, Ethan and I and Bill did growing up, you know, holding controllers. They're holding tablets. And so that to me is exciting because I think we're at an inflection point where we may see some things flatten out for a bit, but with VR and new tech coming on, it's going to pick up even more. And we have no idea where it's going to go yet. So exciting times ahead. Any questions?
I'm Katrine, and my question is, do you need to watch cyber attacks? Does it play any role in your games that you produce? If yes, what do you do? Do you have something to fight those attacks? And if no, are there other certain games that might be affected, that might affect revenue for cyber attacks? Is that a problem for you or not at all?
Yeah, I'll start with that one. So cyber attacks, what we call DDoS attacks, has been more and more common in the game industry. So several events, for example, it's happened at DreamHack a couple times, it happened at BlizzCon a couple times, where someone tried to bring down a server during a big game event. So that's a very real threat. The way that, again, I'm speaking as an IBM, or the ways that we deal with that threat is that based on our cloud world, is we have a product called SoftLayer, which is our IBM cloud product. And the games that are placed on SoftLayer are protected from those DDoS attacks because they don't go through the HTTP server environment. So you have a dedicated environment from your game server, dedicated environment to produce the game in the event or produce it for your customer, and therefore you're limiting that exposure to the HTTP server world. Because when we talk about technology, if some of this is going over your head, I apologize, so I'll slow down a bit. But what happens is in a game experience, sometimes those games are put out into a public cloud environment or a public exposure environment where the DDoS attacks can happen. And the way to prevent that is you can use analytics to find some of that sneakery going on in the DDoS world. You can, based on the cloud closed environment, so that you're cutting off that HTTP world per se, as well as you can use a hybrid environment where you're only putting data that you trust out into the public sphere, if you will, and do that. We've also done some work around using Watson to find attacks going on in the cloud as well. So we have a number of tools in our toolkit, so to speak, to do that. Other companies do have that as well. Again, I'm speaking as an IBMer.
Yeah, since our products at this time are all premium, really our biggest concern is more piracy than anything else. And so, you know, we're doing what we can to avoid that. But at the same time, you know, when you're catering to a boutique audience that's you know, very happy that your product exists, they tend to be willing to pay, which is good for us.
I would just add on the analytics side, we have tools in there that will help you in terms of validating whether or not your audience is real or pirated. And so we do purchase checks with the Android market and also with the iOS marketplace to understand when a transaction happens, we know what currency it is and where it happens in the world, and you can quickly identify if that was valid from what happens from the stores. But it's crucial because piracy is a big deal. So.
Hi, my name is Lake, and I'm a data scientist looking forward to work with gaming data. And I'm particularly interested in games through which not just the game learn about the players, but the players all actually learn something very useful from the games. For instance, Minecraft's just launched the Hour of Code, and then I consider platforms like Code Academy also game-like. So I'm wondering, moving forward, is this kind of game going to have an expanding market, and which kind of companies or research labs are going to be most active in this space? I know Bill talked about the gamification of workspace, so I would love to hear your views on that as well.
There's a lot in that question, so let me see if I can break it down somewhat. So I'll actually go backwards and start with some of the gamification approaches. So one of the things I touched on earlier in our conversation tonight was the fact that in using the data or analyzing that data to protect yourself from like a cyber attack or a cyber experience, is that if I'm using that data, if I'm being able to create a persona of somebody, I can use that data to create a better game experience. So that's one example. Another good example on the esports side is that some of the esports teams, they want to create what I call heat maps. So if I'm going through this event, whether it's an RPG, whether it's a shooter, whether it's a role-playing experience, a lot of data scientists want to create heat maps so they can produce a better event for the next event. So just kind of give you a little picture what happens at an esports event is that sometimes the data scientists will be in the area with the TV technicians, what they call the truck. So the truck comes up, they have all the announcers, the sportscasters, the analysts. So what the analysts want in esports, they want that data real time so that when I'm interviewing the player post esports event, I have that real time data. So if we were going to crunch some data for an esports analyst or what I call a shoutcaster or sportscaster, they want to have like, what's the pulse rate of that game player, right? So I'm playing StarCraft, my heart rate's cranking up. Those analysts want that data real time. So that's a real example of what I call data science data that they want real time. They want to know actions per minute. How many actions is Scarlett doing in her game? So if she's cranking at 454 actions per minute, she's smoking, right? Because that's the average of an esports professional is those high actions per minute. So those data scientists want to grab all that type of data to create a better esports experience.
So there's somebody I know who's founded a company and they've released a game called My Dream, which is very much like Minecraft, but the focus of it is to allow people to understand emotional intelligence specifically, and they go through, Daniel Goleman's emotional intelligence structure, but they do it in a subtextual way so that parents know the value of the product, but for the kids, it's just a very entertaining game. But they're learning how to respect others and, take their 6 seconds to wait until they respond, and, they're classic EQ conditioning, right, that makes them more aware and sensitive to people around them through a game. And through a game that plays much like Minecraft, and it's a lot of fun. And I think that the key to it, in many cases, is to put it in there. But as I said, subtextually, because if it's dessert, then the kids want to eat it. But if it is green beans, they're gonna reject it.
Hi. Hello. Okay, I had a short question. So first of all, I'm very excited about VR gaming and how that's going to look like over the next years. And the one question I had is, when I use VR, I can't use it for very long because it just feels weird after a while. But maybe I was wondering if you think how that will be addressed in the future.
I love that you brought that up. No, go ahead. It sounded like you had one more thing.
Yes, one more thing. What I'm a little bit concerned about is that all the games have the goal of being the most addictive game ever, and each game I try, I see how easy I get addicted. It's almost like a drug, and I was wondering if for business, drugs are good, right? Because people keep buying it.
I would never, as a marketing person, I would never use the term addictive to sell something, ever. I wouldn't do that.
Because that's what all these apps say. Most addictive game ever.
I would never do that. I think that's a mistake. Yeah, but right. And I don't think that's something you should be aiming for. But That's my opinion. So in terms of the VR side of things, you know, we are in the earliest days, right? So at the Steam Game Developers Conference, Steam Dev Days, Tim Sweeney, you know, from Epic said that, you know, we're going to eventually see a metaverse appear where it's like literally another world that you jump into, right? But to make that happen, the headsets are going to get much lighter. The displays are going to be 8K per eye. Right, that's what it's going to need to be photorealistic, and we're going to get there. You know, and these kind of ill-fitting, clunky devices that we have right now are going to look really silly to us 10 years from now. Right, you're in the immediate going to have to kind of get some sea legs, so to speak, to get used to VR, and you will get there. I can now play for hours a night, you know, comfortably. Right, couldn't do that at the start, but eventually it's going to be where that kind of nausea and uncanny valley, you know, is going to be fixed by going from 90 frames to 120 frames, again, you know, higher resolution screens, and much lighter headsets that don't cause sweat and discomfort. You know, stick with it, it's gonna get better.
I would just add that the three most overused words in game marketing are epic, addictive, and legendary. So we try to avoid those at any cost. So.
Hi guys, Ryan. My name's Ryan, and I'm currently a senior in college. I'm going to be graduating pretty soon, and so I had actually two questions. First, I guess, would be, how did you guys get a start in the industry? And secondly, what games are you guys currently playing?
Great question. All right, well, congratulations soon, as if you're going to be graduating. That's awesome. Let's see. So tackle the first part. How did I get my start in the industry? I got lucky. I knew somebody who worked at Electronic Arts, and I got hired as a tester. And then I worked my way into marketing. And it's funny because the marketing guys, I was helping them demo games. And we were demoing games for Peter Molyneux and a bunch of other people at EA. And the marketing people noticed, and they said, boy, you're really good at talking about these games as well as playing them. Why don't you come work for us? And then I told my tester friends, I'm like, the marketing guys want me to go work for them. I don't know if I should do it. And they're like, oh, yeah, no, you want to go over there. So that's how I got started. Secondly, what's in my game system right now? I'm still playing The Last of Us, which I enjoy, and I'm playing a little bit of SimCity and Super Mario Run, actually.
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, congratulations. That's a big goal. So as I think about how I got started, I think I got started by accident myself as well. Someone said they needed a project manager that knew Scrum and said, you're going to do this project over here. They didn't tell me it was a game project. So I actually learned the game industry from inside out. So I was thrown into the fire right away, had to learn all the different technologies, the methodologies, and whatnot. So it was either sink or swim. So I decided to swim, right? And so I've been learning ever since. Going to classes, furthering education, continuing to go to conferences such as this to continue to keep your mind sharp in the game space. And my favorite games right now, I've been playing Kingdoms of Amalur, number one. Number two, StarCraft. I also play LOL a little bit, League of Legends as well, a bit. And when I'm feeling rebellious, I play Most Wanted.
So yeah, I started 17 years ago writing for video game magazines. So I was a critic. My very first year, I was a freelancer, and I made $15,000 all year, and it was one of the best years of my life. I loved it. Many of the people that I met back then, 17 years ago, I still do a podcast with today. So really happy that that's been the case. But now, in terms of the games I'm playing Last Guardian. I just finished Watch Dogs 2, which is in San Francisco, so you have to play it. And the Ubisoft office is in the game itself, which is cool. Been playing everything that I can get my hands on Vive, and a lot of quirky Japanese visual novels on my Vita.
Yeah, so we got a couple of minutes, just one or two questions. Thank you.
Okay. So I will look back a bit at the earlier part of the discussion. Remember the part when you talk about Chinese games entering US market. we are kind of in a similar situation. We are developing games for Russian market, and we have our teams there, and we know users there, and we know where we can get traffic there. So we plan just to, optimize everything for this market. So what would be your recommendation for entering the US market? Is it better to keep it simple and just find a publisher, or you told, okay, keep everything simple, first 60 seconds are critically important, what else, and emotions? Or just
I think one thing, story is also very important in a game. So if you think about it, some of the game markets they put out to produce a game, they have to have an average of 8 hours of gameplay, even before the game is out the door. So I think storyline and plot, the human drama part of the game is very important, because a lot of players right now, they want to have some kind of connection to the game. And I think if you also have a good storyline, and to develop that. So when we look at a game development team, you'll have a storyboard artist, you'll have a writer, you'll have a musician. So good music is also very part of a game. People don't talk about that too often, but the music also sets a tone. So for example, if I'm going into a dark cave, that music's going to reflect that. If I'm in a bright sunshine field, the music should reflect that as well. So I think those are some key components as well.
So did you say, what platform are you talking about? Steam, okay. Yeah. One thing that we got from Steam, you have to make sure that, because you're going to go through the greenlight process, so make sure that when you're building a trailer, this is the best advice I can give, show people immediately what the game is like to play. Right? So when you saw the trailer that we did, we just wanted to show people that it was fun to beat the crap out of robots. And we wanted to show them that as fast as possible, right? Because you get 20 seconds, literally, after 20 seconds, if they don't think what you're showing looks fun, they've moved on. But if you can show them something that they would want to do right now within a 20-second frame, you're going to get through greenlight.
I would just add to that, by what I was meant by simplifying was that sometimes you want to get to the core element of what's really fun about the game, and you want to do that pretty quickly. So take some time with the users and bring them in the game if you can, but get them into something that's fun and inviting as quickly as you can. So don't waste a lot of time on deep menus or tons of character creation. Sometimes you want to get them into the action if you can. Get them there first, give them a taste, and then say, oh, you just defeated this first level. Now you get to go add some layers to your player. Show them how to do stuff a little bit. Spend some time on that user experience. We did some research where we looked at games that actually spent time involving people in how to upgrade their characters. And a lot of times it's sort of buried in menus, but if you actually built a tutorial to walk them through and made them make purchases, not purchases, but made them upgrade the character very quickly, you involve them and you get them the sense of, now I get why that's cool and how possible it is to do it. And that led to like a 20% increase in people just using those character upgrade systems and then thereby purchasing more things within the game. So it's important to kind of give people a little bit of hand-holding early on to get them involved. I would say also, too, if you're coming over to the market, if you're going to be on Steam, spend some time and test a lot with audiences over here. Get some user groups together or get it out to some fan groups and give them time to play early builds if you can and get some feedback and see what comes back, because it's vital to get that loop going, I think, with a smaller user base and see whether or not they're engaged. So.
That's a good segue. DevOps.
All right, so yeah, our times will end up here. And everybody's still sitting here. How do you feel like the panel discussion? Let's give them another round of applause. This is the best. We're called this latest innovation in gaming technology, and we cover so many topics that is the most edgy and latest in the industry, I guess. And these topics are so broadband, and everybody, I think, should be able to learn something from it, right? Yeah. So thank you so much for everybody. So for the rest of time, you may continue networking with our panelists or with anybody here, and also you can try take more food and enjoying the fruits and the rest of things. If you have a good games, I think the developers community, we actually have some investors resources. And if you have really good games, you can come to me. And also we have our media channels. If you guys need marketing assistance, you can send your pitch demo to me, and I can help you to spread out the word. Okay. So thank you so much for our panelists and Roger as moderators. Great job. So wonderful. And thank you for everybody for coming. We'll keep in touch, and the next event we'll have probably next year. Okay, thank you.